Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bituation Room. Back at long last. It feels like it's been forever. It's been too long. My God, we've got such a banger of a show today. It's gonna be great. Tadhg Hickey, all the way from Ireland, is going to be here. Comedian, someone who you've seen doing sketches and commentary specifically about the ongoing genocide in Gaza. He is wonderful, and he is in the waiting room, as well as Professor Noliwe Rooks, who is the chair of Africana Studies at Brown University, is here to talk about her new book, which is How Integration Failed Black Students in the United States. We're going to talk to her about the backlash to DEI, the failures of DEI, but also how we move forward in this moment where the white supremacists have taken control of the government and are using federal forces to, basically operationalize their white fragility. So, very excited to dig into all of that with y'all. First, if you are here, do all the things. Palm the keyboard, like the stream, share the stream, subscribe to the show. If you're listening in the future, what's up? Don't tell me if we haven't made it or not, or if we have made it, or if I've made it in this town. Give this podcast 5 stars wherever you are watching, wherever you are listening. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of that is awesome and very, very, very helpful. So, and remember, I took a little time for last Friday. So much has happened. Donald Trump and Elon Musk hate each other now. We'll see how long this lasts. I feel like not very long. Trump is, making fun of Elon for his black eye, but Elon's like, yeah, you're best friends with Jeffrey Epstein. It's been a lot of drama. I sort of talked about it on social media if you want to check out my Instagram, because so much has happened since. And so obviously today we're going to be talking about the full feds just throwing their weight at the Los Angeles community broadly, at the immigrant community, at people who would stand up against ICE. Donald Trump has ordered now even more federal troops. We'll talk about that, and we're going to talk about a bunch of different angles on this story that is deeply, deeply affecting my community, people I care about, and just Los Angeles broadly. I also want to say that we're next week we are going to be taking off because little Franny's got a vacation planned. However, we also have a very exciting video coming up for everybody. That is sort of why I have been unable to stream as much these days and do as many shows. And believe you me, I have been wanting to, even just going live from the streets of LA. But you're going to get a lot of Franny next week because we're going to be dropping a long form video. So if you're listening in the future, go to youtube.com/FrannyFio. If you're on Twitch, that's where it will be as well. If you're on Substack, I will post it on Substack, but stay tuned for that because we put the Habituation Room team and some old friends put a lot of love into this video. So it's going to be good shit. And yes, Todd Roy reminding everybody that if you do want to support the show and the small team that puts so much love and tender care into every single episode, every single clip, go to patreon.com/Bituation Room and support this show. And if you're like, I miss Francesca, she's out of town, blah, know that you can get access to bonus episodes. This is where in your eye holes, in your ear holes, you get like your own little RSS feed. You also get discounts on Bituation Room merch, which I have now decided I'm going to do the Franny packs. But again, don't hold me to it because that was a year ago that I did. And that's because I literally have way too many hats. I looked at my hat closet. I'm like, I have like no more hats. No more hats. Stop with the baseball caps. So yes, you get so many perks. You also support the show. So thank you endlessly. The Wednesdays are our bonus episode. And yes, we will be doing one tomorrow. In fact, I'll have 2 guests on for tomorrow's bonus, Ben Dixon and Constanza Eliana, who has been live in LA covering the protests, covering the overreaction from the federal government and the LAPD. Both of them are going to be in the Bitchuation Room tomorrows. So with that, get ready. This is both What Are You Bitching About and the week where here we are. So today, Donald Trump has sent 700 U.S. Marines to Los Angeles to scare the community here into compliance, to scare them into allowing ICE to do what it's doing and terrorize communities and families. Again, this is on top of 2,000 National Guard that were sent to crack down on protesters on Saturday night. The total of feds in this city are now about 4,000. Trump has not declared the Insurrection Act yet, but he's federalized national troops. I mean, he's effectively doing it. Martial law hasn't been declared yet, but again, he's sort of flirting with it. And the impact might be the same. And this is all stemming from Friday's raids. ICE raids came down on many different communities, 7 different locations, including 2 Home Depots, a store in the fashion district, and a donut shop. So, in other words, places where people work, okay? Places where criminals and gang members and drug dealers and human traffickers generally don't hang out, right? You don't sort of have a donut shop job on the side after you're doing your human smuggling. That's usually when you do that's what you do. That's how you would make your money. Which all goes to show that ultimately ICE is not about stopping criminals who don't have papers. We all know that was a ruse and that was a lie, and it's been a lie since Donald Trump's first administration, right? And it's only gotten worse. They've gotten $10 billion more. ICE has gotten $10 billion more since 2016, y'all. So what are they going to do with it? This. They deliberately have been focusing on workplace raids and deliberately not focusing on any kind of actual crime, right? So community members came out to film, to bear witness, to try to prevent the arrest of 44 people. They also went to schools like LAUSD schools. Federal agents arrived. They lied and said that the federal agents were told by the children's parents and their guardians, because a lot of them are here without actually out their direct parents, but with their guardians, lied and said their guardians gave them permission to go and detain them. Administrators stopped them. When they asked for who they were, are they ICE? They didn't seem like ICE. The feds did not give them their IDs, refused to ID themselves, and ultimately they left. But here's what's happening right now, y'all. People are hearing reports of ICE outside of parks, playgrounds, Targets, again, Home Depots, anywhere where people are working, caring for you, caring for kids, working in restaurants, right? These are all the places. And so there was resistance to that. And then, of course, this is unfurled, this massive and fast moving escalation by the federal government. Now, it's important to know DHS has their own line. They say that the people they arrested on Friday were the worst of the worst. Their words, quote, worst of the worst. They have faces and names on their website, so you get all scared. And yeah, cool. Judging by the fact that you sweep up people purely because they have tattoos, we totally believe you. Ask Hilmar Abrego Garcia how that's turned out. Ask Anders, who is still in a gulag in El Salvador, how that's all worked out. How honest ICE is when they say that they're actually capturing criminals. We know they're not honest. We know it's all BS. And until we see otherwise, that's the line I'm going with. I would never launder you an ICE line. I would never launder you a DHS press release. Now, the feds have been sent here to patrol detention facilities because, again, heaven forbid said workers have any solidarity or the people of LA have a say, be able to democratically exercise their First Amendment rights and be outside of the detention centers. 2 representatives have tried to gain access to the detention centers. Remember, if they're federal, representatives can inspect them to make sure they're up to code. Jimmy Gomez, whose politics are trash, but who did a good thing to try to get access. He was denied access to the federal detention center, I think yesterday morning. Representative Maxine Waters also denied access to detention facilities. Ultimately, what this is about is subverting the government of California. We're all about states' rights, but except for when it comes to when we want to send in the feds against a blue city and punish them. And look, Karen Bass is, again, has I think, weak sauce centrist Democratic politics. However, she said something, I believe this was yesterday or this morning, that I think was right on the money.
We need to stop the raids. This should not be happening in our city. It is not warranted, and the only thing it does is contribute to chaos. This was chaos that was started at Washington, D.C. On Thursday, the city was peaceful. On Friday, it was not, because of the intervention of the federal government.
That's the line. That is the line. Earlier, we heard Karen Bass saying, hey, any protesters who are doing anything, violent, you need to knock it off and don't give them what they want. I don't want to hear any of that crap. We'll talk about it in a second. That's the line I need to hear. That is the line. This was escalated and instigated by ICE, by DHS, by the now U.S. Marines, by the National Guard. And to give you a sense of the kind of thing that they're doing, and look, they have deployed tear gas, they have deployed flashbang grenades, there was a peaceful protest that started in Boyle Heights. It was led by Centro CSO, an awesome organization that's done long-time immigrant support work here in the city. And they were going downtown, right? People got there downtown, they started tear gassing them. And you guys know, if you've ever experienced tear gas, it's basically like within a block, you're dispersed because you can't see anything, you're coughing, you don't want to move forward. And we're talking about a peaceful demonstration. So they were just being turned around for no reason. And here, if you needed any more evidence, here's a reporter, an Australian reporter who is just talking about what's happening. And then you see there's a moment where there is a dude with a flash bang grenade gun. He's just like, you know what? For shits and gigs, I'm just going to fire one off in her leg.
After hours of standing off, this situation has now rapidly deteriorated. The LAPD moving in on horseback, firing rubber bullets at protesters, moving them on through the heart of LA.
You just shut the fuck up! You okay?
I'm good.
Are you okay?
The weakest people. I saw you reporting, bam, gone. I mean, again, point number 1005 of how this reminds me of the Israeli occupation, but let's move on. There's footage of LAPD trampling people on horseback. There's footage of ICE cars. This was one of the first things that we saw. ICE cars running over a protester who was trying to stop it, running into them. Luckily, they lied down and they stopped, but they could have killed that person very, very easily. There's footage, this young lady, this woman was shot in the leg, the reporter, but there's footage of them shooting people with rubber bullets in the head, right? And these aren't foam bullets. They're big and they're plastic and they can absolutely kill people. I know people have been shot in the head by rubber bullets. It's not good. It's not okay. And they narrowly escape with their people have been killed by rubber bullets. All right. You're supposed to shoot them at the ground and they ricochet up at legs, things like that, right? No, they're shooting them right in people's heads. And then, of course, we're bombarded with images that sort of are supposed to prove, that actually the Angelinos and the protesters are the dangerous ones. And here's just a shot of an overpass that leads into downtown. It's a very famous overpass where that leads you to City Hall, basically. And protesters, no matter whether if they're talking about Palestine, BLM, whatever, you block this road or you walk by the road. So the cops decided to block it sort of in advance. And they also waited underneath the overpass just like, okay, you're kind of sitting ducks there, because what they didn't do was they didn't put people above the overpass and the bridge. And so protesters were over them. Now, what happened? Why are there rocks on these police cars? Who was throwing rocks and pieces of sidewalk on them? Doesn't that look awful? Those cops began, and this is according to local reporters, began shooting up flashbang grenades up at the people above them. So I'm sorry, but you definitely started that one. So what are people supposed to do? You didn't cordon off the bridge ahead of that, on top of you. You basically parked yourself like a sitting duck, and okay, they dropped like a part of a sidewalk on your car. You're fine. It's property damage, right? So like, again, these are the excuses. Here is Homeland Security, DHS government Twitter account saying order will be restored with the dude, a shirtless dude with a Mexican flag standing on top of a burning Waymo. Like, I'm sorry, but this looks, I just it objectively looks cool. Like, I'm like, you can't argue that this looks cool. Order will be restored. Our Waymos will be protected. Once again, Waymos, unmanned. Nobody's in them. Property, right? That have been unleashed onto the population of LA, unleashed onto the cab drivers, the Uber drivers, the taxi drivers, without having a single say in it, right? Training on our streets. Nobody's got a say. Nobody asked me. Nobody asked any citizen whether or not we wanted Waymos on our streets. So it's just so funny, like, oh, the Waymos. And then, of course, the Mexican flag. How could they? No, let me just explain something to you. People in California bring Mexican flags to like barbecues. You know what I'm saying? You bring a Mexican flag to, your kid's soccer game. Seeing a Mexican flag is nothing to be afraid of, especially if you're here in California, a place that used to be Mexico, interestingly. All of this is when people have pride in the countries that either their parents were from, usually their parents were from. It is about saying that this country is a country of immigrants. This is a nation of immigrants. Do not target my community. And we all know that the triggered right, when they talk about waving foreign flags, they mean flags of countries where they're brown people, right? Because, of course, you can go out onto the streets and wave an Israeli flag, and then you believe in sort of a Jewish ethno-state, and that's absolutely fine. Right. And it's very white coded, of course. And that's totally fine. You wouldn't be, no one would call for your deportation. No one would say that was anti-American. No, that's perfectly compatible. There is no dissonance here. So again, stop with the foreign flag psychopathy. Okay. This is about pride. This is about pride in this country. This is about pride in this city. And yeah, it's about the America that we're trying to build and that we thought we were on a path toward until you decided to target brown people and immigrants who built this fucking country. And lastly, the resistance has very much worked. ICE was kicked out of Chinatown on Saturday night after they tried to go there to arrest more people. ICE was kicked out of hotels in Pasadena where they were being held. So it's funny because I've been seeing images of like National Guard sleeping on the ground. And it's like, yeah, man, because no hotel wants to house them. And certainly not hotel workers. Okay. Many of whom are immigrants. You think they want to like have anything to do with that? No, it's terrible for their brand in a place like this. So Pasadena members of Pasadena community came out and kicked ICE out of the hotels they were staying at. And moreover, these actions have been a deterrent to what ICE is really trying and continues to try to do. There are warnings of ICE activity all around LA County, which is once again, target immigrants, target workers, family members, people who are also in immigration proceedings. What does that mean? That means they are going through the proper channels. They are, filing for their asylum claims. They are waiting their turn, so to speak. That is what they are doing. They're checking in with immigration courts so that they know where they are. They're like, look, I'm a gainfully employed person who pays taxes despite not receiving any social security benefits, right? Like, that is who I am. You know where to find me. This has been an agreement. That is what due process in immigration court means. And now Donald Trump has weaponized that against them. We know DACA recipients have also been targeted. So everything else is a distraction. And good on places like Glendale for kicking ICE out of, or saying that they're not going to honor a holding contract that they once had with ICE. So F out of here with that. We all know that also a union leader of SEIU was arrested. He's now been released. David Huerta, he's got a federal charge. He's actually been released, but he's still got like felony charges, not federal charges, felony charges. So spare me this is the right way to protest, this is the wrong way to protest, do this and that, just relent a little bit, and ICE will leave you alone. Are you one of the bad ones? If you're not one of the bad immigrants, ICE is going to leave you alone. Buddy, they're picking up people with tattoos. It doesn't matter who you are. The directive is 3,000 detentions a day. And when Donald Trump says things like this is lastly, Donald Trump says things like this: a once great American city, Los Angeles, has been invaded and occupied by illegal aliens and criminals. Now violent insurrectionist mobs are swarming and attacking our federal agents to try to stop our deportation operations. But these lawless riots will only strengthen our resolve. Our migrant riots. Ooh, we're calling them migrant riots now. What they mean is the invasion it's always been an invasion, right? The invasion is the taco stand on your corner. Which, by the way, I was reading something recently. It was like the amount of like safety that having a taco stand on your corner actually brings to your community is way more than like a cop who's waiting on the corner does. And it's totally true. You've got lights, you've got food, people are gathering. Anyway, I digress. The point is, the very existence of immigrants in a city like LA is being called an invasion by Donald Trump, a retroactive invasion by, it's not Donald Trump, it's Stephen Miller, who when he was in 12th grade, some kid called him a puto and then stole his girlfriend. And then we've been suffering ever since. So that's what it is. I hope our Democratic leaders can dig in, can toughen up. We're seeing some signs of that. I'll talk about Gavin Newsom tomorrow a little bit more because this dude's trying to ride this wave like we don't know. He has been fluffing the far right for months now. Okay, buddy, you're not going to be president. It's fine. With that, guys, I have to let you know that Father's Day is coming up. And you know what? Sometimes dads need to relax, calm down. And so instead of getting him, I don't know, a new pair of shoes, even though daddy needs a new pair of shoes, as the saying goes, why don't you get him some Sunset Lake CBD? So when you shop with the code DADGRASS, which I love, you get 40% off all of Sunset Lake's hemp flower products. So that's hemp flower that has like a little bit of THC. So let's see. The sale ends June 15th. You got 5 days. Sale ends at midnight. Get your dad something he'll love. Head to sunsetlakecbd.com and use code DADGRASS for 40% off all smokable hemp flower products. Again, mostly CBD, but a little bit of THC. Coupon code DADGRASS, 40% off. That's amazing. Usually it's just 20% off. So like if you just want some DADGRASS for yourself, get it. Thank you so much, Sunset Lake CBD, for being sponsors of the Bitchuation Room. And now let me bring him in. He's an Irish polemicist. I don't know if he wrote this about himself, but I love an Irish polemicist. He's a comedian. He's a writer. He's a filmmaker known for his work in TV, theater, and social media. You can support him at Tadhg Hickey, also on Patreon. Everyone got a Patreon, but you definitely need to support him. His name is Tadhg Hickey. Please welcome.
Hi, Francesca. How's it going?
It's good. Thank you.
You're pronouncing my name so beautifully, man. It brings a tear to the eye how beautiful your pronunciation is.
Tadhg did a whole sketch making fun of how Matt and I pronounced your name because from a place of love.
Yes.
we were a little bit mocking how difficult it looks.
We put it behind us. We put it behind. You're moving to Ireland now. We've just got to move on.
Exactly. When we first come over for dinner, we'll be like, "Remember when you mispronounced my name?" Like, damn it. It's okay. My name gets mispronounced a lot. But Tadhg, welcome.
Thank you.
It's been a long time coming. I have always, I mean, I've always loved you. No, I'm so glad that we're in each other's like worlds and orbits ever since, you've been doing a lot of content and speaking out about Palestine, and really was one of the first people to do so on social media. And especially people who are like comedians, also white people speaking out, because usually we're kind of scared of, saying something that would upset our chances in Hollywood. But Tadhg, recently you've gotten banished, excommunicated from the communications. And I just wanted to, please bitch about whatever you want to bitch about, but I did want to bring you in to talk to you about, the deplatforming that's happened against yourself and also a lot of pro-Palestine voices. What happened?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And genuinely, I actually have loved you for a long time. And your platform and your authenticity and your tenacity are really vital in the alternative media landscape. Genuinely, and I just wanted to give you a heads up. And I really, really enjoyed, you educated me a lot about the actual intricacies of what's going on in LA right now in your opening bit. So yeah, like I've been banned a few times from TikTok, and TikTok's just kind of wacky. Like, you get
so
banned
easy to do.
Yeah.
You say like penis and they're like, oh, where?
Like, TikTok's like banned on a Monday, you're back on Thursday, and you kind of haven't done anything, it's a confusing one. But Meta is like, it feels much more malevolent or something with Meta, because it's an automated system. So as anybody who's ever said anything vaguely positive about Palestinian human life will know that if you say anything like that, you get like little raps on the knuckles, and you get shadow banned. I wasn't allowed to go live like permanently, which I thought was weird. I think if you're like telling somebody they can't go live ever again, they must be doing something right. That's the way I would probably look at it,
Yes.
But yeah, recently they did another purge, and I had an account on Instagram that was like getting on for like 300,000 followers, and just overnight it was gone. So I wasn't on my final warning, anything like that. It's happened to like George Galloway in England as well, or in Scotland, I should say. He'd probably kill me for that. And a few other people. And there was like this kind of, it felt like, there's a few on the real naughty list at the moment. We're going to take you guys down, and you guys are gone. But it's the lack of due process, I think, is extraordinary. And not so much about me, but the fact that it's done to actual Palestinians is the thing that pisses me off the most. So like, there's Palestinians in Cork that would have shared my content, and they would have been shadow banned, or they would have been demoted in some way before I was. So it feels like it's a real cynical system as well that targets Palestinians, first of all, and then Palestinian voices. If you get to a certain level and you become too, the way they call us useful idiots, if you become a too useful idiot, they kind of shoot you in the head. And I think
so. It's like you have too many followers. I mean, because what's interesting is there's this thin line between, Meta's been raking in money even because of people talking about genocide. And so it's this sort of like kind of, it's undeniable that like people are going to their sites. The same with TikTok, specifically for information from the ground. So then it's almost like what they sort of like, okay, we've got to throw the, fake anti-Semitic claims a bone here and kick some Palestine content creators off.
Yes, but I think in my case, right, so the collaboration feature, I was like an open goal for that. So any like Palestinian charity, Lebanese charity, like I was playing my little part and bringing some of the smaller pages up. And I feel like they took me down because I might have been a decent part of that infrastructure. By taking me down, lots of other little pages then that had kind of grown in tandem, they were also taken down. So that's why it just seems really cynical. And what blows my mind, and I'm not an expert on the law or anything like that, but when they take you down, there's no recourse. Like, you can't really complain. When I was younger and more kind of innocent or whatever, I thought maybe somebody from the Irish government would kind of go, oh, this is just a lad who's using his page to amplify the voices of Palestinians and some kind of humanitarian causes. Now, obviously, I'm a big boy. I know I'm well capable of getting involved in scrap as well, but I'm not an anti-Semite. I don't say anything racist. I don't I'm really just bigging up the Palestinian perspective, which is so sadly missing across the media landscape forever. And for that, I've been taken out for no reason whatsoever. I mean, we're the center for all these places, like European headquarters for Google and Meta and stuff like that. And I just realized no one's going to come and bail your ass out if our tech overlords decree that you're done. That's it.
And you know, even though there's some horrible right wingers that probably are anti-Semites that some will sometimes come around on Palestine, the tech billionaires who fund a lot of these platforms and are behind them are absolutely not on board with speaking out against Israel. I mean, and there's no recourse, right? Meaning you can't, it's all automated. You can contest it, but that's it.
I think it's illegal as well. I've been talking to a few people behind the scenes and they're like, an automated appeal system, I think, is technically illegal. So again, you got to ask yourself, I mean, why am I doing this shit? Do I want to spend my time battling Meta, or do I want to just keep trying to do my tiny little bit to end the mass murder going on to friends of mine, family in Gaza? You know what I mean? So there are no good choices at the moment or whatever, but I do hope, and I'd like to play my little part in these people facing some sort of justice in the long term, because they're such a massive part of the manufacturing of consent.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, these platforms are not our friends. I mean, then my question to you maybe is are you on your Patreon putting up sketches or boosting people or talking about, do you feel like there's is there an alternative? Because sometimes when I think if everything hits the fan, look, I can't even put the title ICE in a video because Twitch will stop streaming if I say ICE, which is wild, right? And of course we know the demotion if you say the word abortion, and of course the demonetization and on and on and on. But I always think Patreon might be the spot if everything hits the fan.
I hope so, but my partner said to me the other night, what if somebody takes down your Patreon? And I just fell asleep. I can't deal with that right now. I'd literally be finished as a man. I'm done.
Well, it relies on us spelling Tadhg correctly. So
this is it.
Tadhg.
You got it. You're spelling it. You're saying it.
Tadhg.
I don't even know who you are anymore.
I know. Tadhg, let's talk about the big news, which is the flotilla, being the Madeleine, continuing in this trajectory of humanitarian operations, activists trying to reach Gaza, break the siege, and get much needed food and medical aid into the region. Obviously, this ride was a little different because our girl Greta Thunberg was on there. They set sail from Italy, I think about a week and a half ago. They were in international waters and they were surrounded. There were quadcopters in the sky. Israel came down and surrounded them. And it was a pretty terrifying moment that I just wanted to play a little bit of. This is it's almost like surveillance footage, dash cam footage of the Madeleine as they're on their way to Gaza.
It's being very protected for us.
So they're kind of screaming. They're all wearing vests. Now you can see lights sort of around them, and that is clearly Israeli flashlights or, from their helmets or whatnot.
Mobilisez-vous. Go to the places. Teach the phone. Teach the phone. Teach
so they're also organized and trying to sit down.
Phones in the water, please.
And they all have their hands up. Now, I just want to I think there is a narrative out there somehow that this is performative. And I want to just tell those people to, suck my dick.
Mine too. Mine too if they've got time. Fuck off.
Just the idea that do you understand 10 people were killed 20 years ago or more, doing this exact same thing? Turkish activists were murdered by the Israeli, the IDF because of it. And so it's like you watch that and you're like, okay, I'm glad their hands are up. They like, they raise their hands as if, obviously to surrender. But then I'm just like the heroism, how scary, how frightening. There are also Palestinians who we'll talk about in a second who are on the boat. Tadhg, we knew this would likely happen, that they would not be allowed to get in. It's almost like, don't you feel like Israel should just let one of the things work out so they don't look like total monsters? Like if I were giving them propaganda advice, I'd be like, let one boat in. You know what I mean? Like, so you don't look so awful.
Absolutely. I mean, like, I've been talking about this for a while. I think Zionism and the people who support it particularly are under some sort of a kind of like a mass psychosis or something. And I think nothing illustrates that better than this story and the way it's being portrayed, particularly focusing on Greta Thunberg. Like if you're sparing all your vitriol for this 22-year-old young woman who who spent her whole adult life, she's actually spent her whole life trying to save the planet, and now I would say save a little bit of humanity in all of us. And you've got all your vitriol towards her and not this pariah state that we all know across the board, like every human rights group worth its salt is declaring what they're doing, bare minimum, mass murder, mass starvation. And you're not angry at that, but you're angry at this young woman. I just think it's evidence of a complete psychosis. And I know some of the people on that boat. There's a Brazilian guy on that boat, Tiago. He's the most beautiful. I spent a week with him in Lebanon. And I just wanted to bring him home to Ireland with me. Like, he's a beautiful human being. And when you're just with him, you're just like, this guy's the real deal. He doesn't, the guy's never seen a gun in his life. He's a humanitarian, he's a proper humanitarian. And, he's going there risking. Like he's got I've got 2 kids under 2. He's got a young daughter, I think. Do the sacrifices you make?
Yeah.
Like, have we totally lost our mind and our reason that we're not looking at the story going, this is a complete failure of our collective humanity, let alone Western leaders, that these people, ordinary people, have to risk their bloody life to try and get a bit of aid into Gaza, and the way they're treated in mainstream media is to ridicule them.
Yeah.
And don't get me started on Piers Morgan, my sweet Lord.
Oh, I somehow missed that. But I will say, Trump, who notoriously hates Greta Thunberg. Remember, he was mad because she got Person of the Year and Time magazine. And, Greta had a little scowly moment at him, and it was beautiful. But Trump's also not an idiot and sort of can read the room, even when it comes to, obviously he's fully on board and more so with ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians from Gaza. But this was just a fun little catty moment.
I think Israel has enough problems without kidnapping Greta Thunberg.
I think Israel's got enough problems without kidnapping Greta Thunberg. But anyway, effectively they did. Okay, so what happened what happened is they three were deported from Israel, a journalist and Greta and 2 others. And they were encouraged to do so by the group to basically go tell our story, go talk to people. And then the others are still being held. And that includes a member of French Parliament who is Palestinian herself.
Yes.
Rima Hassan is her name. And she refused to be deported. They're now going to be in an Israeli prison. Huwaida Araf, I believe, was deported, was let go. And she's the co-founder of International Solidarity Movement, which, again, for people who don't know, has helped send peace activists from around the world to bear witness to the occupation. Rachel Corrie, who was murdered in 2003, was working with ISM. Also, Aysenur Agi, who was just recently killed, a Turkish-American woman. Killed in last year in the West Bank as well. So these are people who are just straight heroes, and it's amazing. The fact that somebody who is on there. Do you know what Tiago's status is?
No, I don't think anybody's been able to reach him in the last little while. I hope he's able to get in touch with his young family. That's my only hope. But knowing the guy, I mean, as little as I do, but I think I know his soul or something. He will be defiant in his own beautifully gentle way. You know what I mean? He'll just be, he's relentless. And I think, do you know what? There's something about what they're doing as well that why it's triggering all usually very tired, angry, old white men is because it's the sheer humanity of it. It brings into focus exactly what they're missing. Like so many of those, like Piers Morgan types have completely lost their soul. And that's why Greta and Tiago and these people, they just remind them of what they don't have. I mean, I could imagine Piers Morgan at the back of the bus when Rosa Parks was making her great stand and saying, Rosa, you narcissist, you know this is doomed to fail.
Yes,
like,
this is all about you.
The arch narcissist, like, I mean, Christ.
Yeah, absolutely. Piers he just has to have an angle, and that's got to be like, what would the biggest asshole ever say? But it really is just an angle. So here is Greta speaking of her time and why, like, now that she was out. I think this is after I think this is in Israel or on her way out of it to France.
Probably have posted lots of PR stunt videos. As I said, I have not seen anything. But they did an illegal act by kidnapping us on international waters and against our will, bringing us to Israel, keeping us in the bottom of the boat, not letting us getting out and so on. But that is not the real story here. The real story is that there is a genocide going on in Gaza and a systematic starvation following the siege and blockade now. Yeah, I'm very worried about them. We heard many different messages pointing towards that they would not make it easy. And there were troubles with being able to see lawyers. So I'm very much calling for their immediate release and calling for everyone who can to mobilize to their governments and other ways to demand their immediate release. And of course to demand not only humanitarian aid being let into Gaza, but also a ceasefire, but most importantly an end to the occupation and an end to the systemic oppression and violence that Palestinians are facing on an everyday basis.
Are you disappointed you didn't manage to break the blockade?
I don't know if disappointed is the right word. This is a continued violation of international law and war crimes that Israel are systematically committing against Palestinians by not letting aid come in, by starving people and mass slaughtering in every possible way.
So, God, what a narcissist. She's really making that all about her.
Like, have you ever heard her say anything about herself? She's never said anything about herself.
Like, she just kept on going on and on about how they wouldn't let her shower, and
her nails, and her hair, her mess.
Yeah. And like, the food they got in the Israeli prison was gross,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, of course, everyone's got to have an angle because exactly what you're saying. They could never imagine themselves doing something so outside of their safety and comfort, doing something so on behalf of other people that they have to tear her down. And my other favorite line is, there's not enough food in that boat anyway. Like,
yeah.
Shut up. Again.
Doomed to fail.
It was choke on a million dicks. Let me just play this because this was my favorite. This is my favorite, and it's so terrifying. Here is a child who was clearly asked by not a child to do some propaganda on behalf of the state of Israel against Greta Thunberg.
Greta Thunberg, when you were a child, you wanted the good, not the evil. You wanted to protect the world. How come you suddenly became a supporter of terror? You talk about genocide. How can you not condemn the horrors of October 7th? If you want to provide food to the people of Gaza, I suggest you condemn Hamas, because the truth is that Hamas is taking all the food from the people of Gaza, not Israel. And what about the hostages? Are you going to give them any food? I invite you to meet me, and I will show you what the children of Israel are going through.
Oh God, I do not want to meet that kid. I'm sorry.
Oh God. Like, you just know as well, if he gets that take wrong, he's going overboard. Like, get another kid.
Do
like,
it again. He's like, Dad, I'm sick. I feel
wanna see your
sick.
sister. Bring your sister in.
I love that it's an American, but it checks out. That totally makes sense.
It's definitely an American.
But look, it's, you know, my mind immediately went to what is now happening. Like, you know, like it's actually just the, you know, Hamas that won't let any of the aid in, right? That's the problem. Well, here's new footage. This is from yesterday from Drop Site News of, again, one of these I guess food distributions, you know, spots that was set up by some sort of new private entity, not the United Nations, you know, because we target them, we kill them systematically. No. It's a separate, was something like Gaza humanitarian assistance, you know. And this is the second time they have lined people up, made them walk for miles and miles to get there, and then have opened fire on them when they try to get aid. I mean, it feels like we're in the same, you know, hour that I just talked about, you know, being hit by rubber bullets. That's live ammunition. Those are starving people. Like, yeah, man, kid, I wish you could see these videos. I wish you were subjected to some reality. But I, you know, obviously wouldn't want to traumatize you the way that everyone who's born witness and who is living through this is traumatized.
I thought your analogy earlier as well was bang on, that like what's going on in LA right now is not so much violence, it's a response to violence. Like in its own way, it is resistance. So if you're going to be fascistic and bring violence upon a community of a lot of marginalized minorities, then I'm sorry, like if they fight back, if they have the temerity to fight back, then that's on you, baby.
Yeah, that is on you, baby. And it's the same, you know, it's amazing though, because it's the same line that you're like, look, as long as you resist in this particular way within these parameters, we'll stop repressing you. We'll stop. And it's like, that's never been true. I mean, whether it is ICE trying to detain 3,000 people a day or Israel trying to grab more land to ethnically cleanse, no amount of, you know, gentle resistance, you know, which by the way, the Palestinians have been doing nonviolent resistance for decades and decades and decades. We're told that intifada somehow means violence, but the first intifada was everything but. It was about women and children, and that is what the BDS call is. It is a nonviolent way, and to my mind, at least from the U.S.'s perspective, the only real way, which boycott, divestment, and sanctions. But that is being conflated with violence. So yeah, it's just the parallels, Tadhg, are crazy. Before I leave you, can I just play this for you? Because it's amazing. It's like this CNN analyst got his talking points mixed up. I don't know if you've seen this. He is reporting about the streets of Los Angeles, and listen to how he's saying it.
In every protest we see kind of a spectrum of individuals from nonviolent all the way to violent and those opportunists, right? So they will use all those other individuals as shields, as human shields to kind of throw Molotov cocktails or rocks or whatever and instigate. They may not even be from the community. Often they're not. And they don't have a vested interest. Sometimes they don't even care about the cause.
They are using them as human shields. Oh, and then he continues by saying like, oh, and there were Palestinian flags there. And it's like, that's the last thing, you know, before I let you go, Tadhg. I think that one thing that I think people outside of the US understand in a way, and like me having lived outside the US for a while and in Latin America, like it was very clear that like the Palestinian flag is much more than just Palestine. It does represent an anti-colonial, you know, mark of resistance, and like that it is solidarity. It's sort of interchangeable with the idea of global solidarity and the downtrodden. And coming from Ireland and the amount, and I just want to read, because actually in response to, you know, a bunch of countries, especially people who had citizens who were on the Madleen that was, you know, violently taken by Israel, Ireland had the best response. The Prime Minister, Simon Harris, described the Madeleine as a powerful symbol of humanitarian solidarity, condemned Israel's actions. Quote, the Madeleine was an effort to get food and medicine to the starving people of Gaza, an unarmed civilian effort in the midst of devastation and catastrophic humanitarian conditions. He added that the ship's interception highlighted the desperate state of Gaza and the international community's failure to act, reiterating Ireland's opposition to the Israeli blockade. I mean, you kind of won this whole, if it was a contest, Ireland won.
And like Simon Harris is like, for context, is kind of like center right. So like we've a shit government and even they are stronger than the rest of the world. Doesn't that really show the paltry state of Palestinian solidarity, that we're the winners?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll see you over dinner, Tadhg. When we're coming over. Good luck with your 2 under 2. What'd you say?
You're babysitting.
I'm babysitting. Daddy needs to go out. Do you guys celebrate Father's Day? Can I say Happy Father's Day?
Absolutely, of course
Or
you
is
can.
that like
Thank
a Hallmark situation? Hey, Happy
No,
Father's Day.
thank you. Thank
Your
you very
children,
much.
when they realize just how dope you are, they're going to be both proud, and then they'll be super embarrassed by you. But it'll be like a year of them being proud of you, and then they'll be embarrassed by you. You're the best. Come back again.
Absolute pleasure, Francesca.
Everybody, patreon.com/Tadgh Hickey, TadghHickey. Go support him, support his work. Go watch all of his old videos because they're hilarious, and his new ones. Thank you.
Peace out. Up the protesters.
Bye. Thank you. And thank you all for being here. We've got another guest. I'm very excited to have her. She's an author. She's an academic. She's the chair of Africana Studies at Brown University and is the founding director of Segronomics Lab at Brown. She's also author of several books, including a new one out, just came out in March, called Integrated: How American Schools Failed Black Children, which is out right now. Please welcome Noliwe Rooks. Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate you coming on, a little scrappy lefty podcast.
I'm a scrappy lefty. That was raised the scrappy lefty in San Francisco. So
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. And now it's been taken over by tech.
It is no longer scrappy or lefty. San Francisco, there's still some vestiges, but it's such a very different place.
Indeed. The fight for it. I don't know. It's like, it's so beautiful too. You're like, we need to really fight harder for that city. My friend NATO Green, comedian, would probably argue to put more poop on the sidewalk. That's his sort of bit, is to
get rid of people.
yeah. Well, scare all the rich people away with, it's like, oh, you were mad at one needle. Let's put all the needles on the ground.
Yeah, maybe that will run you away.
Exactly.
California is struggling, though. I know we are not here to talk about California, but I've been focused on it quite a bit here in the last few days. It's a battle of narratives in an interesting way.
Well, I think, so tell me what your thoughts are on it, because I opened with it, and I do think that we are seeing, just as we saw the Black Lives Matter uprising rewritten in real time as to who was the instigator of violence in response to the murder of George Floyd, we're seeing it almost faster say that actually, and even Democrats are participating, of course, in the narrative that it's the protesters that are somehow the violent ones, and they have to be on their best behavior. If you're a cop who's armed to the teeth, I mean, there's no way. What are we going to do? It's not like you're employed by the city.
Yeah. Yes. No issues there. But, what kind of flag you want to raise, how you want to protest, if you should protest, should you kick the gases shot at you, the canisters back at them? I mean, there's a lot of, I think the most sort of generous read that I can give to some of this confusion about the nature of protest is everybody is really on edge. I think for some time since the current president's last term, when he and others went to clear Black Lives, or the park right across the street from the White House, and obviously were sort of seemingly wanting a fight. I think for a lot of folks, most generous read I can give to this is that a lot of people are afraid that that moment has come where somehow the martial law that members of the president's cabinet had said to the media before he was elected, they were concerned about some tendencies toward dictatorship, toward martial law. Again, this is what his people warned of. I think that we know it's coming, or we have reason to believe it's coming, and you're just kind of like, do we want it to be right now? Or maybe if you're warm and gentle and peaceful, it won't come right now. And so it's leading to a whole lot of critique about flags. Somehow flags have become central. What kind of flag you can wave when protesting. But, it's
No, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, I think that there's, I saw a good piece in The Guardian talking about, what did they call it? Hypernormalization. That we're in this moment of such dissonance where people are, and this usually happens under authoritarian regimes where you kind of go about your daily activities and you got to get the kid to school or you go to work. And yet, meanwhile, your, neighborhood is being terrorized by ICE or someone you knew, their dad was picked up at work or whatever. And these things, and you kind of just keep on going about your life, but it's this low level. And it's true, you're right. It took 6 months for us to get back to June of 2020. We're back. Where's the new COVID? I mean, the new COVID's on its way too. It's like, and there's measles. So it's like, it took us no time to sort of be squarely right in that moment that honestly, I think Democrats never took advantage of when it came to really.
A good moment. We really didn't. Here's what I'm going to say. I know this isn't what we're here to talk about, but it's almost like doom scrolling, right? It's impossible given the zeitgeist.
Yes.
To not start right here. But I think that there has been a fundamental shift in protest politics. I think I was just telling my husband recently, who grew up in Philadelphia under Frank Rizzo. Who was this hardcore first chief of police, then mayor, who was against affirmative action. He was against poverty programs. He was against Black people, Black freedom. He felt like any effort at civil rights were taking something from hardworking white folks, often ethnic minorities. And he was brutal. In that city, completely brutal, occupying force on Black communities for the period of time that he was there in the 70s. And I really am going to get to a point here, I promise you. I also grew up in in San Francisco, as I said, in a community of activists that included Panthers, Weather Underground, Weathermen, SNCC activists, people from Guyana. It was a very activisty kind of thing, who all came from communities that were under some kind of occupation. In the same way that East Oakland, in the moments when the Black Panthers say we need to take up arms for self-defense, because the police are an occupying force who don't mean us any good. I think the difference for me, I think, is I'm watching a turn back toward those politics that's not trying to make 2025 1975, but the ease with which power believes it can occupy and contain, and that it's finding resonance and support in corners of the world that we didn't expect. I haven't seen it quite like this, where there's literally if there were another Kent State, if there were people opening gunfire at college students, peaceful protesters, in the same way that was chilling in a moment, there was so much support for it. And I worry that while the protests I teach my students is that, you got to get your back straight, get your courage right. Don't be afraid to speak. You speak truth to power. There's organizing and community, and the things that will keep you safe is what we draw on. But there's that little period of the world where none of that actually worked well. And what you were left with, as you look at the decimation of the Black Panthers, for example, is a lot of surveillance, infiltration, narratives that undermine in ways that just leave you with no place to build. Like there's literally, it's possible. And I think we're making a turn here in that there's not enough focus on what safety looks like in a moment when you are talking about unmitigated police power and brutality. At the same time that you're watching civil rights be taken away.
Yep.
You know, it's a moment. It worries me. Obviously.
No, yeah. I mean, I'm curious as to your thoughts on when you just said that in 1975, like when the Kent State massacres happened, like, do you think popular opinion was like, yeah, well, they shouldn't have been protesting?
I think, yes, there were young people, anti-war activists, of course, they're like, oh my God, you see this brutal power of the state that we've been telling you about that's all over South America, that's all over Cuba, that's all over Africa.
Vietnam and Cambodia, yeah.
Yeah, this is the power that we've been talking to you about. It is brutal, it's militaristic, it must stop. So it's this high point for people who are, because they think it's an example that proves the fact of their struggle. And what takes some analysis and getting used to, what takes some settling into, is how many folks though were kind of like, yeah, but should they have been out there? Was this there? Didn't they provoke it? Yes, bullets were shot, but if you're not there, you can't be shot. And it was a real difference in understanding. It wasn't just old and young either. There are a lot of anti-war activists that Kent State turned them back to grad school on Wall Street, right? It was, we are committed, but not like to getting shot down like dogs. Like, you know, that's not. So it's a moment about protest and power and where your support is for it. And in a moment where it looks like an era, an epoch, where it looks like this is going to be a defining era for the U.S. Whatever else happens, it's going to be defining.
And I think to speak to specifically in LA, I mean, we have to, let's move on. But you know, we're only, like I said, 4 years out of, or 5 years, you know, out of the BLM uprising and during COVID and all this. And it's like, we did not actually, especially as a city, we have made some gains in having some progressive city council members who are beating back this bloated budget that gives far too much to cops and not enough to street lights, which keep people safe, and things that actually keep people safe. But so there is so much muscle memory. There's also just kids who've grew up. Maybe their first demonstration was during BLM. Again, what was it, like 60 to 70% of Americans participated in a Black Lives Matter demonstration of any, you know, many different sorts. They tasted tear gas then. They saw like there is a clear understanding, at least in this city, that we have way too much money for the cops who are lawless, disgusting, terrifying, that kill us, that kill, you know, mentally ill people who need help on the daily. And so democratic politics as usual is just so not enough for a state, a city and a state like California. And we're going to see, because we're in this moment where everyone's like, oh, you're going to make, you know, Gavin Newsom president. It's like, no, you're not. You're going to make like a radical, you know, governor, because if we can channel this into some, a movement that has, you know, real legs and infrastructure and all that. So it's not
the Democratic Party. That's what we all understand. What is her name? Karine Jean-Pierre, when she's all like, yeah, I'm going to be a independent now. And there's so many Black people I know, and progressive people and young people who have long been like, the Democratic Party is not it. But we're a two-party system, and that's the problem. Like that, if you only really have two viable options, what does radicality look like? Anyway, obviously we could chat about this for a minute.
We could,
it's disturbing. It's worth talking about, you know.
It absolutely is, and I appreciate that you know, taking some time to talk about it. I did want to play you just to maybe get into. Well, let me just, before we do this, you're the chair of Africana Studies at Brown University. You are, I mean, this is the product of, speaking of the 70s, you know, like fights for things like Africana studies, ethnic studies, gender studies. And we now have a president, administration, a regime, a cultural, you know, these white supremacists in power who are like, no, all of this is awful. We shouldn't be learning about this. Remember, of course, critical race theory was their big thing. Now their big thing is DEI. So you wrote recently in an op-ed that it's not just a backlash moment. It is far bigger. I had your quote, dang it, I lost it, but it's a lot bigger than that. And actually critiquing and dismantling DEI, in you know, to sort of, to like, I mean, talk about that, but like that ultimately DEI wasn't actually meant to make real lasting change, and it was very easy to roll that back, and that's what we're seeing now. Can you just, it's almost like you talk about like a, you don't say it like this, but like a vibes based justice, social justice. It's not really policy.
How you feel about belonging. So in this book that I wrote, Integrated, I do talk about this period in 1970. So as I'm talking about Frank Rizzo, I mean, blacks, the Frank Rizzo in 1974, 72 or 74 in Philadelphia, there's a group of Black students who are calling for Black studies. You know, they're calling for, they're high school students. And they're calling for the right to wear dashikis. It's a period of time. So they're like, we want to affirm our cultures, wear dashikis. We don't want to have to salute the flag, because from where we stand, between what we saw in Vietnam, what we see in our communities, we don't want to be forced to do that. And we want Black studies. We want a curriculum that is teaching us about something about who we are. And about America and the place that we see. And so Frank Rizzo, he was at the time the police chief, shows up at a protest, peaceful protest that the students are having. 300 Black students are in front of the Board of Education and saying, these are the things that we want. And he shows up with officers, hundreds of officers in riot gear, and immediately says to his officers in riot gear, let's go get their Black asses. And he leads the charge into this group of 300 high school students, and is just wailing on them. Now, his officers all have on riot gear. None of the students are armed. They're there again, peaceful protests, just, you know, these are the things that we want. And he's putting people in the hospital. It turns into a really defining moment. And then some people are calling for for him to be fired. He ends up being mayor, and he ends up being a long running mayor, and ends up hardening these activities and beliefs that he has. So in this period, it's still a period where Black people are making, or Black people, women, non-empowered people are making demands based on their idea that they are citizens, that there's something that the U.S. should be mindful of. Like, hey, just reminding you here, citizens with rights. We should have access to some of the same kinds of things.
There should be diversity and equity and inclusion and accessibility. Remembering,
we should have jobs. We should get to live where we want to. Kids should get to go to school and not be told that they can't speak their language when they're there. I mean, you know, there should be an opening of society. The point that I make in this op-ed, though, is that opening is really very much tied to a series of policies that President Johnson really initiated. And the point that I'm really making with that is it's the same policies that this administration is using to drive us in another direction. The scary thing for me there is we know that this works. Some of these policies use the massive amount of federal funding to make people do what you want them to do. So in the 1960s and 1970s, that massive amount of funding was, we want you to open up. We want you to, if you want Pell Grants, you would like the federal government to support the education, make more kids come to your university because they can now have Pell Grants that will pay for underprivileged people, under-resourced people to go. You have to allow under-resourced people in your schools. There's all kinds of money for women, ethnic studies, for like all kinds of things. And it forces open universities this much. People who are in those universities that tell you it was never like the second coming of the revolution had not dawned. However, it opened up and acknowledged that there was a need for space. It used laws like Title VI, the 1964 Civil Rights Act, 1965, the Higher Education Act, Title VI, which is a part of the 1964 Act, that says citizens cannot be institutions cannot discriminate based on identity. Right. All of these things that are now being used, the very same things. Title VI now has a new meaning. The idea of the Justice Department in the 60s and 70s was investigating acts that were making it impossible for Title IX is making it impossible for women, or making it possible for women to claim discrimination and have that adjudicated. Now, all of those things have been pressed into service in an entirely different kind of way.
It's Stephen Miller saying that a real discrimination is the white people who are not now the majority of a college, student body, even though, whatever, they're mad at that it's 7 or 10% students of color versus 1% back before any of the programs were enacted. So my question is, what was the flaw in some of the writing of these DEI policies? Or the Title VI or Title IX, is that it wasn't specific enough? I mean, when we're talking about like the Civil Rights Act, it's like, was there not specificity? Did we need to get more specific or strengthen this, these civil rights laws to be very specific about Black Americans, about people descended, from folks who suffered Jim Crow, whose grandparents weren't able to vote, like whose great grandparents might have been, held against their will? Did we not just specify enough?
I think that in the beginning, when they were enacted, it was just sort of understood. It's the middle of the civil rights movement. People are marching around saying, "Hey, look, the people in the South won't let us vote, or in the North either." Right. So people are keeping the idea of access, and it's very localized around Black and brown folks to a large extent. You have the American Indian movement, and you have again, I'm from California, so you have the United Farm Workers who are organizing in those ways. So it's very Black and brown, and
the Young Lords,
yes, and about equity and about asking the country to open up. Here's the thing that we often, when telling the story of the history of civil rights, I think leave out, which is instructive. The numbers of white people who were supportive of this were never large. This was government and judicial activism. Those policies that we now, for some of us, think of as a heyday in the U.S. of a multiracial democracy, where you're actually saying we want to expand who has a seat at the table, who can go to schools, who can buy a house, who can get a job with the federal government. We are now a nation that wants to broaden that. So for many of us, it's like, yes, anyone can see, obviously, that this is the direction the country needs to go in. Obviously, where more people are getting more, governments working for people. The numbers of folks, so if you start looking at poll numbers, the organizing that starts to take place, the op-eds that start to be written, is all about how basically nobody asked white people if this is what they wanted.
Right.
Like, this seems like a moment. So cis, white, men are constantly just kind of like, that's not our ministry. What is this? What are you doing? And then it turns to, and now you getting something is taking from me. And it's that idea that these rights, these moments, this widening is beneficial is now run up again. It happened once before, again, 1980s with the Reagan presidency, but what has now hit up against people who are simply like, we went too far. It's too expensive to have that. Is that really what we need? I would say though, but the other thing about this moment that I try to even get my students to think about and some of my colleagues to think about is there really is a dis-ease with this idea of elite culture. And there's a mockery of some of the feels, like, you know, we have feels. Right. If it doesn't make me feel good, if it doesn't make me feel safe, if it doesn't make me feel like I'm heard and understood, then it's wrong and must be banished. That's a caricature, but of how people who are so-called elite, it doesn't even matter. Well, I tell my students, you could be first generation, but if you're first generation in Brown University, that's putting you in a certain kind of milieu that's different than I'm first generation at the community college. And you may not think of yourself as entering a kind of heightened elite space, but the folks, I mean, this is like storming the Bastille almost. I mean, you know, people are really the either disconnection for voters who just didn't feel like voting, like just weren't feeling it, didn't like the policies, didn't like the people, didn't feel like coming out their house for whatever reason, just didn't want it, or those who actively decided to vote for someone who's professing fascism. It's a moment, again, that needs a different kind of reckoning, I think.
No, 100%. And I mean, I think that, interestingly, the big bankrollers of the anti-elite and anti-intellectual backlash are people like Elon Musk, like Peter Thiel, who went to elite universities, and in Peter Thiel and David Sachs's case, actually wrote books, and J.D. Vance staked their whole thing on, and this is the university where I learned. They tried to make me sensitive, and there were 2 Black people, and they tried to make me feel bad. And it's like, you know, and so that's the whole politics. But I think that, you know, and I always, you know, love Reverend William Barber III, sort of like, we need this third reconstruction that is so much more systemic. I want to go there, but I do want to talk to you about, because I think what you're talking about was also like kind of liberalism and sort of the halfway measures, and in your book, you know, integrated, which I think is really critical, because obviously, like, studying integration, it's like it should be studied from the vantage point of those who were shut out of, you know, I mean, who are deliberately kept separate, which are Black Americans, Black students. But you talk about actually that that integration has failed Black students, and how there were educational systems before integration that were quite
robust.
Robust. But even building communal building blocks that you so perfectly lay out. So just talk about like the implementation of Brown versus Ward, which is so important, but like what did they get wrong?
And let me just finish that DEI point, because I did not answer your question in one sentence. Let me just say the issue that I take with DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, all terms that there's nothing wrong with them. We should strive for it. We should grab onto them and hold them close. But often those terms end up being about how you feel in a certain place, and they're able to roll back actual rights in order to give you DEI. And now DEI, they want to get rid of that too. So we are rolling back to a whole other period. With Brown v. Board, here's one of the things I will make sure that I get a chance to say, that because I didn't know it before I started researching the book. You know, Brown v. Board of Education is this sort of landmark civil rights moment, like many of the other moments that I mentioned. And it's the Supreme Court case that gives us Thurgood Marshall arguing that separate but equal, this idea that it's not the separation that's a problem. It's not making it illegal for Black and white people to occupy the same space that's a problem. It's having it not be equal. Mm-hmm. So let us be separate, just make them be equal. Something I will say we have never actually tried, but that is not the point. We've never funded it. People went out their way to not have separate but equal. So what I didn't know, I always just taken it as an article of faith. This is obviously, one of the most important moments for Black equality, and then American equality for what it ends up, equality in the US for what it ends up making possible for others. But then I discovered that in Topeka, Kansas, in the place, the school board that is the named defendant in Brown v. Board of Education, the Black people in Kansas and Topeka and Wichita, the two big towns in Kansas, were overwhelmingly opposed to Brown v. Board. They did not want to have their schools closed so that they could go to schools with white people, because the way that Kansas dealt with the post-Reconstruction era, coming out of the Civil War, there's a Reconstruction moment, and then the reinstitution of white supremacy, the way that Kansas did it was to say, we're going to have separate but equal, but mean it. So all of the Black schools in Wichita and Topeka were funded at the exact same levels as the white schools. The buildings were heated and cooled at the exact same ways. The books, same books. The teachers all had to have master's degrees or PhDs and were paid the same. Kansas took the equal part seriously.
Wow.
They stand alone. This was not widespread. And so the Black people were like, well, I mean, go to Alabama or Mississippi, where they are, in fact, making sure that they're giving Black school-age kids the least amount possible, not even letting them go to school for an entire year or a school year. They can go 3-4 months, depending on if they need to pick crops. Or, where there's not heating and cooling, where, go there, fix them, because we have equal schools that we love. But the NAACP said that this idea of segregation was so important that it didn't matter if what it was going to do was dismantle Black educational into schools, Black schools, and fire Black teachers. So in the aftermath, you kind of fast forward to today from that ruling, which led to the firing of so many, about 80% of Black teachers and administrators were fired following this ruling, and Black schools were closed. And the former dean of Howard School of Education says that in the decade following Brown v. Board, almost $2.2 billion of income were wiped out. And 80% of Black schools were closed, and Black teachers were fired. And in the aftermath, what you're doing is then saying, now we want to bus all of the Black kids an hour away to white schools that very often did not want them, weren't prepared for them, weren't interested in them. Like, there was all these trauma stories that Black kids started to have about their treatment at the hands of white adults and children regularly. You can still hear about these integration stories today. It's more where you'll have something like, there'll be one school and everybody will go to the school, but there's a track that's mostly Black and brown, and then there's a track that's mostly white and Asian, and then the AP track on the top, and the Black and brown one is at the bottom.
And that happened in my high school. Like the Wall Street Journal wrote an article about my high school in California because of just how segregated it was. It was so tracked. It was the most tracked. But we had this sort of like diversity is our strength, and really leaned into the multicultural aspect of the school. But at the end of the day, we all knew that the AP classes were majority white, and we all knew, I even had teachers who were like, you're in ghetto science, and that's what they would call it. Yeah. So it's just like tracking super exists,
It super exists, and it reproduces. So you have a building, and the building based on demographics, you would call it integrated. You'd have different kinds of folks, but you look at who's getting the best education in these spaces, and you can still do a racial kind of analysis and breakdown. And there's a long history to where that comes from. But with integrated, what I point out is so much was damaged in the ways that integration was implemented. tried to be implemented, so much was taken away, so many teachers lost that that when things started to go badly, when things started to fail, when it became clear that integration was not going to just be an easy thing, a thing easily implemented, there were no schools for Black students to go back to. There were no teachers still there to teach them. So you went from a system which too few people really know. I talked to, my students certainly, and they're shocked to know that there were high quality, high performing all Black schools pre-Brown v. Board, that there were quality teachers with masters and doctorates who did amazing things with so-called hard to teach Black kids. They don't even know that ever existed. It's been so removed even from our consciousness, much less reality.
Can I did want to just pick up on a couple threads there, because one thing I saw you've talked about is that instead of starting with the kids, which was very traumatizing to integrate the kids, starting with teachers and administrators, having them integrate first, or as part coming along with the kids would have done. I mean, jobs could have been maintained. It also could have shown an example. If you see adults integrating with one another, that's important and tells you how you can behave and treat, one another. So it's just like, yeah, that seems like such a oversight.
There's so many Black teachers, so letters and oral histories. My grandparents were Black teachers in the segregated South. So that's a part of, they're in Clearwater, Florida. That's part of why I know some of this history, because I know the people who raised me. And I'm like, and I didn't see them in the stories we were telling about schooling and teachers. I just couldn't find them. But a lot of the teachers, including my grandparents, really fought hard. They fought the NAACP hard. They fought against them winning the case. And then when they won, they wanted Black teachers and administrators to go first and integrate these schools and work out whatever tensions they had, and then invite the kids. They're like, let the adults figure it out. And then you also have faces that they'll be used to in those institutions.
Of course, yeah.
But no, they didn't want to do that because the NAACP felt like sending children and it's an age of television is just starting to really catch on in the 1950s. People are sitting around in the evening watching programming. It's this new phenomenon, and they felt like they could win the hearts of the country by showing children being. They knew they were going to be sending them into these in the South, that they were going to be sending them into schools where there would be crowds and spit and, violence and threats. But they thought the innocence, and this is a fatal, to my mind, fatal flaw here, that the innocence of children, the fact that they're babies, that Ruby Bridges is 6 years old, that somehow this was going to win the hearts and the minds of the country, and they would bring pressure to bear against the terror that white families were subjecting children to. That, of course, fatal error just did not happen. So
yes, I really wanted to sort of bring this full circle because you mentioned Ruby Bridges, and I wanted to play you this clip actually because speaking of Pennsylvania, I mean, Rizzo is gone, but we've got we've got leaders like Summer Lee, who is wonderful, Representative Lee, and she had the opportunity to grill Department of Education head Linda McMahon. Now, Linda McMahon's entire job right now is to dismantle the Department of Education, which will disproportionately hurt lower funded schools that because of, we didn't get to this, but because of white flight and charter schools and the privatization push in response to integration has left schools underfunded, right? And so a lot of, schools that get funding from DOE are, schools with lots of kids of color, also rural schools, on and on and on. So here's Linda McMahon, and it's brilliant. And Summer Lee is asking her basically like, you have this new directive because the DOE has a new directive against DEI education. Well, what does that mean? This is her asking her. We'll skip around here, but it's long, but it's good.
Hearing, you were asked by Senator Chris Murphy if an African American history class violated the administration's position on diversity, equity, and inclusion. You said you'd like to look into it. You've been on the job for a few months now. Have you been able to look into it?
I do not think that African studies or Middle East studies or Chinese studies are part of DEI if they are taught as part of the total history package. So that if you're giving the facts on both sides, of course they're not DEI.
I don't know what both sides of African American history would be.
Well, if African American history is
Certainly, but what we recognize throughout education is that a course is only 1 year or one semester. It would be impossible to teach African history and say European history at the same time. Do you not agree that it makes sense that there would be separate courses for these courses of study? It has happened throughout history. We're able to do it not just in history courses. We're able to do it with different types of literature courses or different types of music courses. One wouldn't learn about Baroque music and necessarily have to also learn about African drumming at the same time, right? We can separate those courses.
Yes, we can. And I think just as we teach U.S. history as a separate course.
Certainly.
So obviously what Linda McMahon is saying, she's not saying like, oh, as long as you teach the other side, teach European history separately. She's saying when you teach about, I don't know, slavery, the Chinese Exclusion Act, you include why the xenophobes and the slave owners wanted those things. Like that's what she's saying.
That's both sides. And I'm the chair of Africana Studies. And we literally were like, but what? So now, one thing I would say in Africana Studies, it's Africana because it's global. So we have Africanists, Caribbeanists, Black Europe, Black people in Europe, Black people in the US. So it's a global kind of thing. And what that means is the debates, we have no problem showing a diversity of thought in Black studies because very often, there are conservative Black people. There's more progressive radical Black people. There are philosophical texts. There's creative texts. So setting up and showing a diversity of thought that doesn't always agree with each other, with each position is not difficult. But being told that the entire field, like this is where we're like, are we now supposed to, for everything we do, say, but by the way, there were at the same moment that you're watching a rise of civil rights legislation in the 60s, you also have people like Arthur Jensen, who's publishing saying Black people are inferior. Their heads are not as large. Right. They're not as capable of us. Like we have to spend time trying to legitimate that as opposed to just bringing it in as yet one example among many of what inequality looks like when it's systemic.
I want to play a little bit more of this because she asked her specific questions.
I would like your thoughts on simple yes or no. If this is a legal DEI, an example, would you say that it would be an illegal DEI for a lesson plan on the Tulsa Race Massacre?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
Do you know what the Tulsa Race Massacre is?
I'd like to look into it more and get back to you on it.
Okay, so I look forward to that. How about the book Through My Eyes by Ruby Bridges, for instance?
I haven't read that.
Have you learned about Ruby Bridges?
If you have specific examples you'd like
that was a specific example.
I'll be very happy.
It was an incredibly specific example. I named a specific
questions, and I will look into it and get.
So I'll get back to you. She does not know who Ruby Bridges is. Remind us who Ruby Bridges is.
So Ruby Bridges is the first elementary school student to desegregate a school. She's in New Orleans. And you've seen the images of her that are produced in all kinds of ways, where it's a little girl with marshals, the legs of grown men that are federal marshals walking beside her, and she has this big suitcase and she's striding into the school. Like you've seen it in the New Yorker, you've seen it.
And she later toured with the young woman, the white woman who was sort of spitting at her. I remember they were sort of like.
I think Oprah.
Friends.
Friends. Well, Oprah used to do that a lot. But the thing about Ruby Bridges is she's called a martyr. One of the things I talk about in the book is when we lay the burden that we placed on these children, and we often hear, well, there were martyrs and that's what it takes, and yay. But this little girl, 6 years old, the year before was in a supportive Black school, the school that had mostly Black people, Black teachers. And she goes into this school in New Orleans, And no white parents will allow their children to sit in a classroom with her. So for the first year she's at the school, while we're calling her a hero, she's sitting in a classroom by herself with one white teacher who decided that she was in fact going to still teach. She couldn't help that no other people were going to be. So she and Ruby Bridges are for the first year. That's it. That's her experience of integration. And that with that, like, childhood is so important. What the skills that you learn, how you learn to feel about yourself, all of that was taken from her for that year. And I think the humanity of the children involved, we need to also pay attention to.
Well, and you also talk about it through your own family history. I just want to, because, you say your father was not able to do that after he, went to an integrated school, didn't feel seen, supported, and couldn't hang. And that really shaped his life. The fact that, in a white school or with white teachers who didn't believe in him, having come from a school where his Black teachers did believe in him, was really impactful, and still is. Like, it's not just your dad. I mean, I think you talk about how it's so many Black families across the country. Last thoughts on just like where to, like what are, it's hard to be in this visionary state when we're in such defensive state, but I think lacking a vision is the reason that we're in this defensive state when it comes to education.
I think that when it comes to both K-12, so I think the story of K-12 and the story of higher education used to be two different stories. I think they're converging. What's happening with public education in general right now? How you have people saying AI will be the second coming, to teach all the children. Everybody will be personalized. From the rise of vouchers, charter schools are not even the big thing anymore. Now they want to defund charter schools and just let everybody have vouchers to send their kid to a religious school, homeschool them, a micro school, or a traditional public school while you're defunding things. I think that public education has gone from something that they're trying to break to something that's broken. And I think that we have to, that it's broken for people who are not wealthy, that it's broken for people who don't test well, don't go to private schools.
Right.
And that we really need to take seriously the fact of that. I recently wrote a piece that hasn't come out yet about literacy rates for Black and brown kids. These are the kids who go to school every day, who are not the ones missing out. And you're finding things like 70 to 80% who are not proficient, are less than proficient. Some of levels of 40 to 50% straight illiteracy for people who go to school every day. Like, how is that not a crisis? Right? How is that not something that we're out in the street up in arms over? And then you look at what the closing of opportunity for higher education, the less Pell Grants, the move to have everyone go to trade school, which I actually think is great. I think the more that you want to make opportunities for people who a liberal arts education is not what they necessarily want for themselves. For those who do want it, we need every opportunity for them to have it.
Right.
But for those who want to do something else, sure. What union are you going to get in? Racism is what it is. Where are you going to get those apprenticeships? So what we're looking at is a pretty comprehensive cause for concern. But this is where I go to artists and writers and people who help keep my hope and my vision together. People like Octavia Butler, people like James Baldwin, people who in the nadir, envisioning the Octavia Butler is envisioning post-apocalyptic US, and who still give us a way forward. And that way forward is always, you have to have courage. You have to have the faith in a vision that you have.
Mhm.
And you have to fight for it, and you have to understand that not everyone is gonna support you in it. You need organizing. This idea, this rampant individualism, where people want platforms, access, and but without actual organizing. What's the
Yep.
ask? What is
Yeah.
it you want? What's the far off ask? What's the attainable
Yep.
ask?
Yep.
You have to work in community. You have to organize. You have to know what you want, and across all sectors, I think that this is true. But for people who understand that under education is a like I'm struggling to not say is a form of slavery, because I'd have to explain it too much. So I mean, I have to go some ways to not just
Right.
like I'm
Right.
here. But it's the lack of access to education.
Yeah.
And or when the education you have access to is consistently subpar, consistently
Well,
organized to keep you in a particular caste.
Exactly. Well, and that's, and I have a forthcoming piece on, on my channel, but really, that talks about, these tech billionaires truly believe that some people should be deliberately undereducated. I mean, this is the mentality that obviously gave us things like slavery. I mean, it is some people, gee, I wonder who, are just not fit for, the managerial class, or the whatever, the intellectuals, or the leaders, or the politicians, and we know exactly who they're talking about. And so the anti-intellectual, you sort of collegiate backlash, I think you're totally right when you're like, this, it's actually much bigger. It is like, nope, we got to get them young. It is K through 12. It's like, no, we even have a problem with educating people K through 12, right? And again, like, it is part of the also Christian nationalist project. If we're moving to religious schools, to private schools, to small schools, we could talk for so long, and that's why I kept you even longer. Noliwe Rooks, your book is Integrated: How American Schools Failed Black Children, which is out now. And also, do you have a website people can check out your writing?
NoliweRooks.com.
Here we go. Thank you so much for being here and for your insights.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Likewise. I think the last thing I wanted to say on this discussion, I really want to draw a parallel between what Noliwe Rooks was talking about in terms of the resistance to integration and how it wasn't popular. And I think right now we're living through a moment where people are saying that, look, undocumented immigrants and the Trump's policies are just popular. People don't like undocumented immigrants. People like Trump's policies. That's why we have to do mass sweeps in workplaces, even if they're not criminals. Sorry, like, remember that integration was also not popular. Remember that people being for immigrant rights is not also popular. It's the moral thing to do. It's the thing that will help our country both function humanely, but also function in every other way, economically, in terms of strengthening communities, safety wise, right? That, like, these two things were once unpopular, but it is on those of courage, it's on our political leaders to make them popular. Let me say it again for the millionth time. The job of a good message is not to say what's popular, but to make popular what needs to be said. Anat Shankar-Osorio, she said that on this program. Please, let's remember it as we move forward. And as you see so many of these narratives attacking not just Black and brown people, blaming them for obviously the systemic failures, but as we see it coming down on undocumented neighbors and families. So thank you so much for being here, everybody. What a show to come back on from our mini little break. I want to read some comments. This has been long but good. Flower Dracania says on Twitch, I'm a Black woman born in the 80s. My mom put me in a white Christian school. The racism I experienced on a daily, weekly basis was hard to say the least. I got called the N-word frequently, and I still can't imagine what Ruby Bridges must have felt as a first Black child to attend a white school. 6 years old. 6 years old. Thank you for sharing that. David L., we really do live in a caste system based on credentials. Yeah. Based on money that you have. The Groove Dragon Head Start program was instituted by the Black Panther Party for self-defense. So were free breakfast and lunch programs. Indeed. Hypno Amber, I'm way behind, but excellent guess. I'm going to get back to that. Thank you, Vitingale, for being a member, and thank you, Kathy McIntyre. Thank you for being a great progressive voice and being an ally for the LGBTQIA community. Yes, happy Pride, everybody. Ugh, it's been a weird one in LA. People are like protesting, but also like, partying, and that's where I think we belong. Robert says, how can Trump declare martial law if his name is Donald? I don't get that, but it is the dumbest name ever. I mean, I'm no offense to other Dons out there. The LAPD is trained by the IDF. There we go. Indeed. Zach Bina, social accreditation neglect effect do big, not a celeb. Even if anything, nothing. I don't understand this comment, but I appreciate your super chat. Yeah, we are streaming on Substack, frannyfio.substack.com. And LTT Taco Dragon says, we need America Unhinged back. Pff, you and me both, girl. Tanya Dodgers, la novela se está poniendo buena. I mean, se está poniendo interesante. Like, el pueblo unido, you know what I'm saying? Guys, thank you so much. Hey, become a patron at $10 or more. Become a member on YouTube. Become a member over on Twitch. I'm going to thank everybody who has become a paid member over on Substack. If you're watching on Substack, you get a shout out during the fart song, which is a little Franny's in the wrong spot. Cut all this. Thank you so much, Kave, for becoming a patron. Thank you, Tracy Ava, for upgrading your pledge. I feel like you upgrade on a regular basis. So I appreciate you. I feel like there was someone else I just missed from today who might have upgraded their pledge. Maddie Reiskoff added your pledge. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, Maddie, as always. Thank you, Fitch, for resubscribing on Twitch. False Prophet 93 for giving out 10 community subs. What a G. Evan in Defer resubscribed. Thank you. Appreciate you. Let's see. Any new members? No new members on YouTube. That's okay. I forgive y'all. I love y'all. And thank you for being here. Thank you to Paige Omek, to Brent Godin, to Andy Vasoyan. We are streaming Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Also live in Seattle on August 1st and 2nd. August 1st, which is a Friday at Laughs Comedy Club. August 2nd at the Rainier Arts Center. That is a live bituation room. You don't want to miss it. Matt Lieb, Francesca Fiorentini in the flesh. We will see you there. Also, Houston on August 28th at the Punchline Houston. Matt and I will be co-headlining. So get tickets wherever you're watching or listening to this. And until tomorrow, fight the power, fuck the patriarchy, free Palestine, and don't just bitch about it, be about it. Bye-bye.